So I'm going to talk about the kind of the administrative part of outcome-based management. I don't work for an agency, but I'm somewhat familiar with it, and I also want to talk about some of our production goals. And so I think most everybody here has heard of NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act, and on federal lands, any action has to be cleared through NEPA. And so what's the problem with NEPA? I mean, the goals are noble, but the problem is that once you start thinking about doing a NEPA document, it ends up being 10 to 20 years down the road before you get the final document done for a complete grazing plan. Now you can, if you have a specific action that you want to go through, you can do that a little quicker. But if we think about what's been happening with the climate the last 30, 40 years, it's been changing, hasn't it? And so if we're going to accommodate that change, we need to do things differently than we've always done. So the old style NEPAs, it's a prescription. You have a pasture, you have an in date and an out date. You have how many animal units you can put in there, and then it doesn't change. You might have a little bit of variation on which pasture you go into first, but we have a real lack of flexibility. And so if we're wanting to affect changes on the ground or affect our outcomes, then we've got to change how we do things. As an example, the area to the west here along the road, and look at that as you go back to the barn, you'll see on this side of the road, you'll see an area that has a lot of cheatgrass, a lot of this bulbous bluegrass, Japanese brome, not very many shrubs, and some perennial grasses. On the lower side of the road, you're going to see this sagebrush intact community. And the one on this side, as Brendan mentioned, was a fire that came through and swept out the sagebrush. And so when we were meeting there a couple years ago, Brendan made a pretty impactful statement to me. He said, the sagebrush community is a pretty intact community. Barring a major fire, it's not going to change a whole lot. The site that has a lot of the annual grasses is also an intact community, and it's not going to change a lot, barring that we change the management somewhat. So he mentioned about maybe late season grazing. So if we could extend our late season grazing there and attack the cheatgrass when it has a lot of that litter layer there, and we can break some of that up, and we can work on those young seedling plants, then it will help us in our goals to get more sagebrush back into that community, because sagebrush needs bare soil to germinate, and if it's got a litter layer of cheatgrass, it's not going to do it. So that's what we're about, is flexibility. So outcome-based management only started, I think it was 2018 with the BLM, and they started 11 projects nationwide, and we're trying to be one of those projects here. And so we've been working with the BLM for 2 or 3 years, and so we have tried to involve a very collaborative community. We have on our team that has worked on this, we have the BLM, of course, we have U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service reps, we have the Idaho Rangeland Conservation Partnership, we have the Nature Conservancy, we have the Wood River Land Trust, and then we have the university and the people that work with that. And then we've had other people come in and out as we have done this. And we think that with that collaborative approach, we can get to that suite of outcomes that we like to have out here that Brendan was talking about, that will satisfy not only our goals as livestock producers at the college ranch, but also the goals of our partners. And so we have three main issues on this ranch that we have identified, and we've identified those by reviewing the file record, and we've also identified that by coming out on field trips. Anytime you can get out on the ground like we are doing here today, it is invaluable. You can look at things on the ground, you can agree on what you see on the ground. You may disagree on how you're going to get what you want to see on the ground, but you can agree on what is out there. And we've identified three main issues. One is the lack of flexibility in the grazing plan, and one is the lack of water developments. It's a problem on most Idaho ranches and throughout the West because, you know, cattle got to drink somewhere. If you got a dry year and that area that they drink happens to be a riparian area, that area might get hit harder than you would like it to. And then we have the issue of the invasives that we want to not. This ranch is pretty intact, but we don't want to see these invasives that we have here. We don't want to see them go all the way up to the top of the ranch and dominate. We want to keep the perennial grass community. And so to do those things, we have the outcomes, we have management guidelines, and then we have triggers. And so the trigger might be one of those oops, as Brendan mentioned, and you trip that trigger, okay, rather than going through a whole new NEPA with outcome-based management, you've got those triggers built in there. You've got a toolbox of possible things you could do. So we trip a trigger, we reach in our toolbox, and we pull out, okay, let's do this. So for instance, let's say we get a really, really wet winter and a wet spring. What's going to happen to the invasives? They're going to skyrocket, aren't they? They're going to just come up everywhere. But if we see that, like if we've seen that happening starting in the fall of the year, we could say, well, is there any way that we could get more livestock out here to harvest and break up some of that litter layer and give us a little bit of a chance come springtime. And then the last thing, as you mentioned, you've got to have monitoring. If you're going to have triggers, you got to know when you've tripped them, and then that's when you can change your management. So I love livestock, I love rangeland. I like seeing rangelands that are healthy and the grass is waving in the wind. I also like to see Flosbees out there harvesting. Flosbees are four-legged organic soil builders, so I like to see those out there as well. You know, that's kind of our spiel on what we're after. The challenge right now is BLM, and in the Twin Falls area, they have 40 vacancies of people. We were rocking and rolling, we were meeting last spring, then all of a sudden, so that's a challenge. But we hope within another 2 or 3 years, possibly, we will get our outcomes-based management document out to the public, scoped, and then we can apply it. And then we hope then that we can move the cattle around wherever we want, whenever we want. We just, on the BLM, we just stay within the allotted numbers, but we change when we put them out, how we put them out, where we put them out. So that's our goal. Any questions? Okay.
Yeah. Well, is that one of the challenges? I mean, it sounds like you've identified the lack of BLM staff and the turnover as a challenge. Is that one of the challenges that the collaborative can address?
Yeah, so is that an outcome that the collaborative can address? If we scooped up money to pay somebody to help, but but they still have to get it through their regs and so forth. That's the only way I can see that we could speed it up, is if we had somebody helping write an NEPA. In some locations they have done that, but they're kind of protective. Obviously, you know, it's their agency. They don't want somebody else writing their regs for them and so forth. So only thing we could do is maybe help them with writing the science part of it. I don't know anybody in our group that wants to do that, to be honest. We have submitted a document that lays the framework for what we want to do, and they have that document. I think that's about what we can do.